and welcome to the 18th episode of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news every week. I'm Steve Elliott, your host. I'm the editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. First of all, let's take a look at some pretty flowers, our bud pick of the week. We have some Super Lemon Haze, which is a nice sativa. I got this at the access point called the Alternative Clinic in Port Hadlock, Washington today. And bud tender David helped me make this selection. All of their top shelf flowers are $10 a gram at the Alternative Clinic, and they have quite a good selection to be out in the sticks like they are way up there on the peninsula. They had about 20 strains today when I stopped by, and David is a good guy, friendly guy. He can help you through that selection. Let's do the news, shall we? Biggest story. In Colorado, we have federal agents and Denver cops raiding medical marijuana facilities Thursday, November 21st. Federal DEA and IRS agents, along with officers of the Denver Police Department, on Thursday morning and through the day conducted raids at multiple medical marijuana facilities in the Denver and Boulder areas. A statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Denver confirmed the ongoing raids. And according to Michael Roberts at Denver Westward, the alternative weekly there, he said his sources told him it's likely to continue through the day and involves a notable number of targets. A statement from Jeff Dorschner, who's a spokesman for U.S. Attorney John Walsh there in Colorado, gave very few details about the raids, but early reports filtering in placed the number of raided operations just under 20. The Drug Enforcement Administration, the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigations, the Denver Police Department, and state and local law enforcement are today executing lawfully obtained search warrants and seizure warrants, reads Dorschner's statement. The raided locations included a couple in Boulder County, according to a law enforcement source, reports Mitchell Byers at the Boulder Daily Camera. A pile of cut-down marijuana plants was visible outside a grow operation on North Foothills Highway, and DEA agents had the assistance of the Boulder County Sheriff's Office in that raid, according to the Daily Camera. Workers at these facilities said that there were at least 4 different grow operations located there, with about 4,500 marijuana plants on the property. One of these grow ops off North Foothills Highway, the Rifle Mountain Dispensary operation, appears to have been spared. A source in a position to know told me this morning. Preliminary reports are that the Rifle Mountain grow was the only one spared at the old Raytheon missile silo site in Boulder, which is a big complex with a number of large buildings and warehouses. An August memo from Deputy Attorney General James Cole stated that the federal government would allow the implementation of marijuana legalization in Colorado and Washington and the operation of medical marijuana laws in 20 states if they follow federal guidelines, such as locating more than 1,000 feet from schools and parks, avoiding sales to minors, and avoiding marijuana crossing state borders. But a note in Dorschner's statement seems to claim that today's raids are in accordance with the Cole memo. Although we cannot at this time discuss the substance of this pending investigation, the operation underway today comports with the department's recent guidance regarding marijuana enforcement matters. Dorschner's statement reads, "As this is an ongoing investigation, no additional information will be made available," his statement concludes. The Justice Department said it would respect states' rights to regulate marijuana and that it would not go after businesses as long as they're complying with state laws, said Mason Tvert of the Marijuana Policy Project. "We hope they are sticking to their word and not interfering with any state-regulated, law-abiding businesses. If a business is suspected of violating state laws, they will likely face increased scrutiny, and if they're found to be in violation, they will likely face consequences," said Tvert, who was behind Amendment 64, the legalization measure approved by Colorado voters last year. "That is how our society treats alcohol," he said, "and that is how we expect to see marijuana treated." Much better news from Florida. A poll has been taken there, and medical marijuana has overwhelming 82% support in the Sunshine State. You know what makes that even better news? Because backers of an initiative are gathering signatures for next year's ballot. And with 82% support in the polls, if they get that thing on the ballot, it looks like a slam dunk. This poll was taken by Quinnipiac University on Thursday. The folks who want to legalize medical marijuana in Florida, if they can get their proposal on the ballot, they are overwhelmingly favored to prevail next November, according to Peter Brown there at the Institute. Support for the proposed constitutional amendment, which could appear on the 2014 ballot, is very strong among voters of every political affiliation, every age, and every income level. Independent voters show the highest level of support at 88%, according to the poll. The 82-16 overall support for medical marijuana, 82% in favor, is the biggest ever recorded in Florida. The previous crest of support was at about 70%, taken in a poll earlier this year by People United for Medical Marijuana, the group behind the constitutional amendment. Outright legalization has the support of nearly half of Florida voters at 48%, while 46% oppose cannabis legalization for personal use. Support for full legalization is strongest among independents at 57 to 37%, and Democrats 55 to 39%. Men support recreational legalization 52 to 44, while women oppose it 44 to 49. Republicans oppose marijuana legalization by 64 to 34%. But GOP support of medical marijuana is solid at 70% in favor and 26% opposed. An overwhelming 90% of voters under age 30 support the medical marijuana measure. Medical marijuana is so popular in Florida, in fact, that it could impact the governor's race. And this is an interesting point in the upcoming gubernatorial elections next year, because in tonight's stories, two that we'll come to in just a moment, there are 3 gubernatorial races that we'll mention here that could be impacted by the marijuana question. Florida, which we're discussing right now, and Pennsylvania and Maryland, which we'll discuss in a moment. Meanwhile, back in Florida, Republican Rick Scott is against medical marijuana, while Democrats Charlie Crist and Nan Rich both support the initiative. Crist's employer, trial lawyer and Democratic donor John Morgan, funds and leads the medical marijuana drive. Morgan lost his father and a brother to cancer. A top Republican donor in Florida, former Ambassador Mel Simler, is opposing medical marijuana through his Drug Free America Foundation. Scott trails Crist by 7 percentage points in the race for governor, according to the poll, 40 to 47%. Now keep in mind that Crist is the challenger and Scott is the incumbent, but Scott is 7 points behind in the poll and his challenger favors medical marijuana. This proposed medical marijuana amendment looks to be headed for victory in Florida if it gets on the ballot. Now, Puffum needs 683,149 valid voter signatures by early February. They have about 200,000 of those so far. Meanwhile, we have Florida's Republican Attorney General Pam Bondi, who wants to stop voters from even getting to have a say on the question. She's asking the Florida Supreme Court to block the measure from appearing on the ballot. And that issue is set to be heard in the Florida Supreme Court on December 5th. The amendment would make Florida one of the most permissive states in the country, Bondi claimed in a brief. Unlike most other states' narrow and limited programs, this proposal would allow anyone of any age to use marijuana for any reason, so long as they find a physician to say that the benefits would outweigh the risks. So, Pam, if a doctor says that the medical marijuana benefits would outweigh the risks, I'm wondering why an attorney general is weighing in on the matter. Anyway, Florida House Speaker Will Weatherford, also a Republican, joined in on the Reefer Madness sing-along. We firmly believe the wording of this amendment is not about legalizing marijuana for serious medical illnesses, but rather creating a path in our Constitution for marijuana shops on every street corner, Weatherford claimed. The ballot summary is misleading, and the impact of this amendment is far, far greater than John Morgan and his supporters would like the public to know. Isn't it funny how a lot of politicians are willing to stop 10 patients from getting medical marijuana just to keep one guy from getting high? In West Virginia, lawmakers are once again looking at medical marijuana legislation. On Wednesday, they looked at a draft of a bill that would legalize medical marijuana in West Virginia. Nearly identical bills were introduced in the House in the past two legislative sessions, but both of those died in committee. And if that happens again, the Senate would never see the bill. But Senate Health Committee Chairman Ron Stallings, a Democrat from Boone, West Virginia, he's also a physician, said that there are medical uses for cannabis. The issues, Senator Stallings said, are the logistics and the liability of providing safe access to patients. The draft legislation was briefly discussed on Wednesday when it was presented to a joint House and Senate Health Committee. House Health Committee Attorney Charles Roskovinsky described the measure as a very rough draft for an eventual bill that could be introduced in the 2014 session of the West Virginia legislature. Under this measure, qualified patients could possess up to 6 ounces of usable cannabis and would be allowed to grow 12 mature marijuana plants and 12 seedlings if they don't have a caregiver who grows for them. Caregivers would have the same limits for each of their qualified patients. Patients would be allowed to buy from licensed caregivers or from compassion centers, marijuana dispensaries, after being authorized by a physician with whom they have a bona fide doctor-patient relationship, according to the bill. The bill allows for 5 dispensaries in the state in the first year of implementation of the law, 6 in the second year, and then more if necessary after that, according to Roskovinsky. Qualifying conditions include debilitating medical conditions like cancer, HIV/AIDS, glaucoma, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a few others. After getting a doctor's authorization, patients would be required to register with the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources to get a card saying they can legally use cannabis. Another section of the bill provides legal protections for healthcare professionals who authorize patients to use marijuana, as well as protecting caregivers. This is the first time we've had input from lawmakers on the legislation on an official basis, said Delegate Mike Minniepenny, a Democrat from Taylor County, West Virginia, who introduced the previous 2 medical marijuana bills, and he said he plans to do so again this year. Minniepenny said he's optimistic that the measure could pass a committee and make it to the House floor this year, with an actual law passing by the end of the 2015 session. Let's hope he's right. In Washington, as I-502 legalization continues to roll out, we got some concerning news this week from the Washington Liquor Control Board, which is in charge of marijuana legalization implementation in this state. The Liquor Control Board, along with the Washington State Department of Agriculture, last Friday announced that more than 200 pesticides will be allowed for use in the production, processing, and handling of marijuana sold through state licensed stores. Now, if you were expecting pesticide-free pot from the state stores, so much for that idea, and don't even think about asking for organic cannabis, as there certainly won't be any of that. Is it a coincidence that the Liquor Control Board waited until the day after their public input meeting to announce that state store marijuana will have all these pesticides in it? One can only imagine what the patients who spoke last week would have had to say about that. Many of them have compromised immune systems, compromised liver function, or both, which makes it a really bad idea to ingest bug poison. Of course, that's not going to do anyone any favors. By the way, you're not going to be allowed to grow your own pesticide-free marijuana because under I-502, no private home growing is allowed. And as the WSLCB told us again at Thursday night's meeting, they're recommending that the right to grow, which Washington patients have had for 15 years now, be taken away as well. You see, it's inefficient, they told us, to have more than one place, you guessed it, them, to buy your cannabis. Never mind that plenty of patients won't be able to afford these state store prices. Never mind that plenty of them don't need to be ingesting pesticides. It's time to make some fat pot profits, people. With 25% taxes applied to cannabis at the growing, processing, and retail levels, yes, that adds up to 75% tax. That marijuana, which could legally have had more than 200 pesticides used on it, will cost you pretty dearly. Estimates have run as low as $15 and as high as $50 a gram. You can visit the story on Toke Signals. Washington Liquor Board says 200 pesticides allowed on marijuana, and there's a link in that story so that you can check out the rules on the Washington State site. In New Mexico, the largest county in the state is defying their medical marijuana law. They've announced that county employees cannot use medical marijuana. This new policy follows the firing of an Iraq veteran for exactly that. And veterans, patients, physicians, and advocates are fighting back in New Mexico. When a state legalizes medical marijuana, as New Mexico did years ago, that means you can't get in trouble for being a medicinal cannabis patient, right? Wrong. New Mexico's largest county is bucking the state's medical marijuana law by prohibiting any use of marijuana by county employees, following a new policy issued on November 12th by Bernalillo County Manager Tom Zdunek. The county memorandum cites federal prohibition and county policy as the reason for prohibiting the use of marijuana by county employees. Now, more than 10,000 New Mexican residents are actively enrolled in the state's medical cannabis program, and nearly 4,000 of them live in Bernalillo County. Many are military veterans, patients living with disabilities, and victims of serious trauma and violent crime. New Mexico's medical marijuana program is considered a nationwide model. In 2007, New Mexico became the first state to develop and implement a state-licensed medical marijuana production and distribution system. Earlier this month, veterans and policymakers teamed up to host a public summit launching the new Freedom to Choose campaign that aims to address New Mexico's military veterans' legal access to medical marijuana. In response to the county's new policy, the campaign has introduced a petition asking for all compassionate New Mexicans to join them in telling Bernalillo County to protect the rights of New Mexicans and to change county policy to allow patients in the medical marijuana program to remain employed. Last December, Corrections Department Lieutenant Augustine Stanley, a father of 4 and a U.S. Army veteran, was successfully using medical marijuana to treat symptoms of PTSD acquired from his tour of duty in Iraq. He was dismissed after he tested positive for marijuana in a random drug test. I tried all the prescription pills the VA gave me, but none of the medications worked, he said. I felt worse than before I took them, more depressed. Another corrections officer who is also a veteran suggested I try medical marijuana. At that point, I was willing to try anything, Stanley said, so I became a qualified patient. Medical marijuana worked for me. I am able to enjoy my children and my wife. I never used my medicine before work. In 13 years of working in corrections, there was never a mark on my record. And then one day I was fired. I was even up for a promotion. Stanley's story is not unique. Many military veterans who do not find relief with prescription medication turn to medical marijuana. When I returned home from Afghanistan, I was diagnosed with PTSD, said Michael Ennis, who served in the General Infantry and who was awarded a Purple Heart after the convoy he was traveling with got hit by an IED and was then ambushed. I worked with my doctor and I tried many prescription drugs, Ennis said, taking handfuls of pills every day, every one with a different set of side effects, was hard on my body. And I still experience some symptoms, he said. Cannabis was not my first choice of medicine, but I tell you firsthand, this medicine works for me. Cannabis allows me to leave my house and has helped me return to work. Tell them not to turn their backs on veterans, patients with disabilities, and victims of trauma and violent crime, said Nat Dean, another medical cannabis patient diagnosed with chronic pain and PTSD. We deserve access to the medicine that works for us. Don't take away our medicine. Current pharmaceutical cocktails have limited efficacy for PTSD, have significant debilitating side effects, and have in many cases proven deadly, confirmed Lisa Walker, MD, a board-certified psychiatrist. Given these facts, along with the experience of thousands of patients whose quality of life have been improved by its use, medical cannabis should continue to be an available treatment for those suffering. Patients deserve, above all, the freedom to choose the safest and most effective treatment for their disabling conditions, whatever that treatment might be, Dr. Walker said. This is a backwards policy that will prevent people who are suffering from accessing the medicine that works for them, said Jessica Gillette, project coordinator or policy coordinator for Drug Policy Alliance in New Mexico. Many people find by participating in the medical marijuana program, they are able to return to the workforce when before they were too sick to be employed. It is unconscionable that the county manager would unilaterally attempt to deny county employees the right to use a medicine recommended by their physician, Gillette said. It is time to stop demonizing marijuana and creating a double standard for prescription medications. This county policy memorandum is out of sync with a nation where the most Gallup poll found that 58% of U.S. residents favor legalizing marijuana for non-medical use. In Pennsylvania, that's another of the states I mentioned where the gubernatorial race could impact the race for governor. One hopeful for the Democratic nomination for governor of Pennsylvania has predicted that the primary will be a referendum in reforming and legalizing marijuana law. He has endorsed cannabis legalization, saying, for a lot of people in this state, this is the top issue in their lives. John Hanger is currently running fourth in a six-person Democratic primary race for the right to oppose Republican Governor Tom Corbett next year. If I'm elected, I support expunging the criminal records of anyone convicted of possessing small amounts of cannabis, Hanger told the city paper on November 14th. I don't want to arrest and lock up thousands of Pennsylvanians every year for possessing and using small amounts of marijuana, Hanger said. I think if people come out and vote in favor of their liberties in May, then we will win the primary. On Monday, one of Pennsylvania's most liberal legislators, State Senator Dalen Leach, a Philadelphia Democrat, joined with conservative colleague Senator Mike Fulmer, a Republican from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, to introduce a medical marijuana bill. Fulmer has fought cancer in the past and has said he's seen patients who have benefited from marijuana. A poll taken in May found legalization reaching new heights of support in Pennsylvania. An overwhelming 82%, identical to the number in Florida, by the way, of those polled favored legalizing cannabis for medicinal use. However, 54% said they oppose overall legalization in that same poll. In this crowded gubernatorial field, Hanger's legalization stance could distinguish him from his competitors, according to political analysts. And another gubernatorial race in Maryland, where one of the hopefuls there is proposing marijuana legalization. Maryland gubernatorial hopeful Heather R. Mazur on Tuesday proposed legalizing marijuana and using the tax proceeds to fund pre-kindergarten education. Mazur proposed that Maryland regulate marijuana much like alcohol. Running for the Democratic nomination for governor, Mazur faces Lieutenant Governor Anthony G. Brown and Attorney General Douglas F. Gansler in next year's primary. She estimates that taxing cannabis could net up to $157.5 million in new revenue for the state annually. Under her plan, Maryland adults 21 and older would be allowed to have up to an ounce of cannabis legally. Public pot smoking would not be allowed, and it would be illegal to drive under the influence. Marijuana's time as a controlled, illegal substance has run its course, Mazur said. Marijuana laws ruin lives, are enforced with racial bias, and distract law enforcement from serious and violent crimes. A Maryland with legalized, regulated, and taxed marijuana will mean safer communities, universal early childhood education, and fewer citizens unnecessarily exposed to our criminal justice system, Heather said. Marijuana would be subject to an excise tax of $50 an ounce at the point of sale between cultivators and retailers under Mazur's plan. At a 6% sales tax and a 2% excise tax would be imposed at the point of retail sale. Maryland legislators this year passed a bill authorizing distribution of cannabis for medicinal purposes by qualified academic centers, but that bill is unworkable and will never result in any patients getting medical cannabis, according to experts. Even optimistic estimates admit it's unlikely that any marijuana will be legally dispensed before 2016, and it remains unclear if any institution will ever participate, especially since they're recipients of federal funds. A slim majority of Marylanders, 51%, support marijuana legalization, according to a Goucher poll released this month, while 40% said they oppose legalization. Gubernatorial candidate Heather Mazur, who is supporting legalization, lives in Tacoma Park, Maryland with her wife Deborah, and she would be the first woman governor of Maryland and the first openly gay governor in the United States. Our must-read story this week is in Toke Signals, and it's by Mickey Martin. It's a story that stresses me out and it's stressing a lot of other people out too, because the organization Moms for Marijuana is in turmoil and seems to be falling apart. One side of the story is told every day on the Moms for Marijuana Facebook page, but only one side. That concerns me. The other side of the story is now told in this post from Mickey Martin entitled Hostile Makeover: How Cheryl Schumann Destroyed Moms for Marijuana. So if you want to inform yourself with both sides of what's going on, it's important that you read this. And I hope that you choose to do so. I hope that you also have a wonderful week and will choose to join us again next week for Toke TV. Until that time, stay lifted.